All right, Maddie, we're getting started here. Looks like some people are jumping in. Numbers are climbing fast.
Course, we're incredibly popular.
Well, you are. I'm just some guy. I'm that sidekick.
You're the guy. You're the trash panda, as I learned.
Don't tell anybody. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for showing up so far. We're gonna try and help you survive a race, a grapple race. Maddie's probably the smartest one in this room, so I'm gonna let you start it off, mister.
Great. Yeah. So, welcome to the Gravel Racing Survival Guide. Gravel is fun. Trust us. Wink, wink. So, brief introductions here. I am Matti. I've worked at Training Peaks for, should I give them the truth or should I lie? 10 years now. Started out in support, then moved on to the marketing slash education side. So I occasionally will hop into Training Peaks University. I do a lot of courses for Training Peaks University, articles, and occasionally moonlight in this sort of capacity. And I also have my own coaching business, which started on the road. But when gravel got really hot a couple years ago, decided to jump in there and branch off from my buddy's company. So I founded Gravel God Cycling LLC. It's even legal. And yeah, now I coach, well, lots of off-road cyclists, still some road cyclists, but with a main focus on gravel. And just because there's so many people and it's really fun and thriving and continues to grow, even though the spirit of it is dead. And what else is there to say? I still race bikes, even though my family weighs me down and prevents me from expressing my full fitness potential at almost 40, which I resent deeply. But so yeah, I ride for Team Rio Grande and live out in the Front Range, just outside of our headquarters here. So yeah, and I'll also hand it over to you, Trash Panda.
All right, we did get a question here. Is anybody else having trouble hearing Maddie? We got somebody asked a question about that, but I seem to hear you fine. So if anybody else
Okay.
has sound issues for Maddie, jump in the chat or the Q&A. All right, so Trash Panda, that's me. That picture is me taking a break from riding stupid, chunky, rocky nastiness in Croatia. My background is mostly in the bike industry. I've been at Training Peaks for it'll be 3.5 years now. Yeah, 3.5 years. I'm on the marketing team. I'm a content strategist. So I kind of oversee webinars and video projects and all kinds of fun stuff that you get to see on our social media. And then, um, what else? I started mountain biking first, destroyed my mountain bike, had a road bike, started road biking, on a three sizes too big road bike that some guy sold to me. And then kind of just turned into a ride everything kind of guy. But yeah, I'm not one that races at the pointy end of the stick anymore, if ever, because I don't know how to be a bully and make room for myself. If you jump into Maddie's recent Substack, you'll know what I mean. So,
Right on. Alrighty. So a couple people have mentioned that my audio is okay, so there's mixed messaging here. Yeah, if that changes, just if you can't hear me at all, just let me know and I'll take out my AirPods. Um, yeah, so I guess the way we're going to do this is we're just going to talk about our first gravel experiences from the perspective of as we're newbies, and then so I'll go first, and then Josh will go. and then we'll discuss some takeaways and open it up for a question and answer format. So my first gravel race, this is kind of hard to believe for a lot of people, was Unbound 200. Uh, I did it back in the day because I thought everyone was doing it and it was such a cool thing to do. And as a roadie, uh, primarily a roadie at the time, I thought, how hard could this gravel thing actually be? So I bought a cyclocross bike. I put 38 millimeter tires on. I didn't secure any camping or any lodging. Then I drove to the RV campgrounds with my buddy, loaded down with Miller Lights and Twinkies outside Emporia, and then started the next day thinking that I could be really special and perhaps stay in the lead group. And I had a little flat kit on the back, and within, I would say, about the first 5 miles, like just as we got out of town, the flat kit fell out, landed in my disc brake, and instantly gave me mechanical. And about, this is before there were elite waves or group rides, so about 1,000 people passed me as I sat on the road frantically trying to dislodge my flat kit from my disc brake. Finally got that loose, and then I thought, just like any other road race that I participated in, that the most important thing is you just stay with the lead group as long as you possibly can until you get dropped, and then you'll either DNF and make up an excuse or slowly limp in. So I lit the afterburners in every conceivable way as hard as I could to try to catch up with a lead group. Now, I live I live in the Front Range, so in Colorado. So I do have a little altitude on my side coming down to Emporia. So I don't really know. I didn't really know the numbers that I should try to be governing myself with. So in that first hour of chasing back on, I set every like minute, 5 minute, 10 minute, 20 minute, hour, 90 minute power PR for that year, trying to catch back on. And I didn't catch anything. Uh, Other than, I don't know, a couple hundred people, but I did not catch the front group or even the sight of them. And I just held it for about 4.5 hours, which in hindsight was really impressive, until I got into the first aid station, and my friend who had agreed to come out and help me saw me roll up, and his face just went white when he saw mine, because my face was red and completely flushed, and I looked like I was a couple steps away from the grave. And he's like, "Oh, fella, you've been going a little hard out there, huh?" And I think it was like mile, I don't even know if it was mile 100, and maybe it was halfway. But I was spent. And I remember going out of town, like if you've ever done a really long ride, a really hard workout, and a really hard race, and you crack or you break or you bonk or whatever else, and you still have a little time left, and you kind of get this feeling in your gut like, oh, I really don't want to do this. I'd rather do anything else. It was like that, except I had to go 100 miles. And so by the time I got into the second aid station at mile 150, it was so hot. 2021 was one of those years. It was so hot that there were just, it was like some sort of like mushroom ceremony out on the plains of Emporia, because you'd be riding and you just see people who had stopped riding entirely and were just sitting under a tree looking into the distance. And you'd yell out to them like you're supposed to do, "Hey, is everything okay?" No response, nothing. And you're like, "Okay, see you later." And you just keep going. But it was like that for the last 50 miles. And then I got into the aid station and was going to pull. I was dead. And I just lay there because everything in my body was twitching. My face, things I didn't even, places I didn't even know I had muscles were twitching. My eyebrows, like weird places in my neck. And my buddy just told me, "Hey, if you just pedal, you'll finish." And I didn't want to, but he said that he wouldn't leave until I left pedaling. And so
That's
I did.
that's something.
Yeah. And so I ended up finishing in like 13 hours or something, with not a shred of dignity or pride in my accomplishment. And that's when I fell in love with gravel.
Wow. That's I don't I know I can't top that, but
You
wow.
absolutely can. Let's hear
All right. So first gravel race for me, this is 2016. There's a hill climb race outside of Boulder, called Sunshine Hill Climb, and it's probably like two-thirds road or two-thirds dirt and one-third dirt. Two-thirds dirt and one-third paved. And so the top half is all the gravel and whatnot. So I was riding just a road bike with 23 C's pumped up to 110, what
Yeah,
rolling resistance.
yeah, baby.
And then so I don't know if that counts, but the actual first official gravel race that I probably did was Steamboat Gravel, the first year that they did it. I signed up for the black because I thought I was a hero. And my wife decided to take us on a vacation to Alaska for 10 days, about six, like for 10 days. And then I'd have 4 days of recovery to go to the race. Well, we did about, I don't know, 25 to 30,000 feet of gain hiking over those 10 days. So my legs were garbage. And I got to this is on the original course. And so there was a junction where you could go left to do the 100 miler. If you stayed right, you had to go up to Oak Creek and do the remainder to do the 140. There's a pretty big climb. It was probably like, I don't know, 90 degrees in the afternoon. And I stopped at that junction for 20 minutes and just decided that I was done and wasn't going to be able to finish. And this was after I had been in a pretty decent like second group up the Steamboat State Lake Park, and I burped a little bit of air out of my tire and had to pump it up and trying to catch back on the descent back down on the paved road, and they were gone. And then I was in no man's land. So just in between any groups, I was literally riding alone. So when I got to this 20-minute find my soul moment, I just pulled the plug and soft pedaled in to the end. went went to the closest picnic table and just had a beer and sat there and laughed at myself. So that's me.
Beautiful.
Yep.
Beautiful. That sounds like a classic first gravel race. I love that you, as part of your tapering plan, your wife decided to time the vacation just so.
Oh man, we saw some cool stuff, but it's amazing how much energy hiking takes out of your legs. Wow.
Yeah. All right, let's go. Just to change up the order a little bit. So let's go with your tips first.
My tips.
Things you, things you listed for surviving gravel, or just things you wish you'd known from the outset.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, like going into SBT that first time, I was like, yeah, I'm pretty fit. This should be no big deal. Um, have some fun out there. And, you know, walking up to the line, my mindset at that point was just like, yeah, I'm gonna rip this thing. It's gonna be great. But I really think that, you've got to have a game plan. Actually, you need to have multiple game plans. And A is perfect. B is, yeah, it worked. C is, okay, we're gonna do some triage. And D is death or survival. And so I think that's key is to have that in your mind of, okay, I'm going to aim for this. And as you go through the race, you have to evaluate. And if A slips away, don't think that the race is over, but just know that, you've got to work a little bit more to kind of maintain. And also, at that start line, there's all those nerves and panic and worry for some people. And you just got to get your head right because it's much like riding a bike. If you're worried and thinking you're not going to do well and you're going to struggle or you're unprepared or anything like that, that's where you're going to go, is where your mind is. So have those expectations, but good expectations, but just be ready to triage and address the problems when they come up because it's inevitable. I mean, these races are long. You've got to be able to take a crappy situation and spin it. Um,
I'm
one
gonna
thing,
pause it there because
yeah,
I'm gonna weave right in there because that's my first, and I love that you said that.
yeah,
For me, I think the number one thing, and if you're gonna take a one thing away from this, is just adjusting expectations going into the race, especially if it's your first gravel race. And now you can do different, races often offer different distances. The sort of like smaller entry ones typically range 15 to 30 miles, and the mid, which can be 50 to 80. And then there's usually like the premier event, which is longer, and maybe even the like which often is the ultra distance. But whatever you're doing, it's a new discipline, and gravel. When people talk about the spirit of gravel, they're talking about how the surface is fun, or there's something quirky about it, or things that can go wrong. So in other disciplines, when it's more like understood, like the demands are understood, the surfaces may be improved. You can kind of predict the conditions more. No matter how much we figure out the demands of it from a physiological standpoint or otherwise, there's still, and this is part of what we like about gravel, and we love about gravel, at least we pretend we love, is there's still this element of unpredictability about it that is an inherent structural part of the race. So if you go in and you think that it's like a time trial on this um, this perfect new fresh pavement with traffic stopped, like no, that's probably not going to be your experience. You're probably going to encounter some cattle, or somebody's going to throw something at you, or there's going to be crazy mud, or what the heck they put in that kind of single track, or are we really going up a ladder? Like the stuff like that happens, and people do that too and have the fun. So your expectations that you have from previous experiences, or because you read an article, you need to take that out of your brain, and then you need to like put it down and just be open to have some fun and expect that everything isn't going to go to plan, and that finishing is fine, especially on your first goes. Like, for example, to bring it back to my unbound, like my expectation shouldn't be my first unbound is I'm going to be in the lead group for most of the race. Like my expectation should be let's try to finish this. Like you've never ridden longer than 150 miles. So let's work on finishing 200 miles, chief. Like let's start there. That would have been a good internal goal for myself. But in all the people that I've coached, or other people that I've witnessed, I think maybe the fundamental undoing is just this mismatch between expectations and reality going in.
for sure. Um, just some super quick pre-race tips that I do not only for gravel racing, but I'm also an ultra runner, is, setting up a specific activity profile for a race so that you're not looking at all the data. You're looking at like specific need to know numbers like time, um, general distance so that you know where the aid stations are and things like that. But if you're sitting there analyzing your average power and your calorie burn and all that other stuff, it's just more, I feel like it's more stuff for your brain to get focused on as opposed to just paying attention to what you really need to. And I'll use alerts, just to remind me because I'm awful about hydration, to just drink more. I have my watch or my head unit set up to just go off every 20 minutes so that I make sure that I'm doing that. And then the weather forecast, this is probably an overlooked, but most people think they do it, but you've got to be sure you know what's coming at you so you know what to take for that long ass day because things change, especially you know, for us here in the Rocky Mountain region, I mean, it can look sunny and perfect out there and not be forecast to have thunderstorms, and you'll have one storm cell come through. So, um, The one thing that I'm gonna call out, and this is from ultra running, is A&D ointment. Just go down the baby aisle and get A&D ointment. It's way better than Body Glide or chamois cream or any of those other things. It's hydrophobic. Put it on your feet. Put it on your important bits. You know, it's it's just such a better like skin protectant. So,
Noted.
because like I'll slather that on my feet, and if I come to a water crossing, I'll sacrifice my feet over, washing, getting a bunch of water and dirt and grime into my drivetrain. I'd rather let that just stay as dry as long as possible. So,
Nice. Uh, I'm gonna piggyback on this untold pre-race tips. Uh, so I and I didn't necessarily put this in logistics. This goes with logistics for me. I love that you said find the stuff you forget about when riding. I like to tell people, especially before big, long, gnarly sort of events that are going to be really time consuming and logistically demanding, to imagine a version of yourself about 25 IQ points less and how you would hold the hand of that person through aid stations, through potential mechanical issues, and through eating. Because I think a lot of people, especially with the abundance of information out there, think that they're going to be this really dialed and sharp computer like biological being out in the race where they're going to set that timer like you suggested and they're going to know exactly how much to take, and if they get a flat, oh, they've got their plug right there and everything is so swift, and when they get to the aid station they're going to remember this 7-step process that's going to take them 30 seconds and then they're out back into the race. And it's like, no, you're going to be tired and you're going to make terrible mistakes, sometimes fatal. So, like, dumb it down, like, make it very easy for yourself, make it simple. Like, imagine the most tired, confused version of yourself still unable to fail and pass logistical tests. And it's just going to make the experience better if you don't have to think so much and you can focus all of your energy into enduring this fun that you've put yourself through. Also, I would say one of my biggest tip is like know and tattoo Murphy's Law on your forearm. Like, if something could happen and you don't prepare for it, it probably will. So, that nagging mechanical that you didn't really pay attention to, that strap you think might hold through one more race, um, that shoe that's a little uncomfortable, you notice 80 miles in. Well, guess what? At 160 miles in, it's like a raging blister and it's going to make you want to amputate your foot off. Like, that strap is gone and your back wheel is falling apart. Like, all of that will happen. So, like, you need the bike you bring, all of your equipment, everything. It needs to be simple and it needs to be perfect at the start line, because the last thing that you want is to leave some sort of opening where Murphy can come in and like add extra color to your day, unless that's the experience you're looking for.
oh yeah. All right, let's do nutrition real quick, I guess. Something that I've learned over these ultra distance things is if you don't continually get just a little bit of something in your gut, like it's going to shut down, and then you really have to force yourself to eat, and then you really feel terrible, and then you really question life choices even more. Um, and I mean, never be afraid to puke and rally. I mean, I've done it. It works. But it's all about the sodium, red ambulance. It's early for me. I've been up since 4, doing a photo shoot. But um, camel up, that's something that I have to do. I drink a ton of water at an aid station and then get out. And for those of us that are not so much on the pointy end of the spear in these races, you're out there long time, long time. You can chew up all those carbs you want, that's fine, but you're still gonna need some protein and fat to get like satiated a little bit. Otherwise, your stomach's just gonna turn on you. Oh, for red
I love
ambulance.
that.
That's a Coca-Cola.
I've actually never heard that. That's great. And I love the Red Ambulance as well. I'll just jump in quick with some nutrition stuff. Um, 50 grams an hour is so 2010. I love that you said you should be eating kind of constantly. I've personally never done the puke and rally thing, so I'm gonna just like separate myself from that advice and let you field all the angry questions about it, including myself. I might be the first to question that one. But I will definitely second sodium. I think if you don't understand your sweat rate and like how much sodium you should take in, especially the hotter the event, you're really leaving some potential performance on the sideline. Uh, and I would say with all of this, especially in longer gravel events, um, you should realize that no matter how good your nutrition is and how much you've built up your gut and how much you know your sweat rate, you're still going to have a bad time if your pacing is asinine. Like you still need to reasonably pace yourself. You know, your body, you have a performance level. You're probably, all of you are probably familiar with TrainingPeaks metrics or TrainingPeaks adjacent metrics. Like the closer you get to your threshold and above it, like it's just the hotter you run, the more carbs you burn through, the more quickly you're going to fatigue. And so if you burn matches, if you spend time above that in an acute way or even near it, especially when events get long, like that's when no amount of nutrition or hydration, while it will help stave off fatigue, you know, you have to pace yourself intelligently. So there is that interplay between nutrition and the IF, the intensity factor, or just from a subjective perspective, like how many matches you're going to burn, that you need to have a pretty good, I would say, internal power meter with a good sense of. And
Yeah.
that goes to running, that goes to cycling, that goes to anything that's super long. But I think sometimes that gets lost in this conversation.
Yeah, I think another aspect of that too that I like to think of is the harder you're going, the simpler the nutrition needs to be to get into your system, right? So like if you're going super hard, it needs to be the simplest sugars, that you can absorb. Whereas if you're going slow, your party pace, you're at the back of the pack, you can eat more solid food. You can take on a little bit more diverse types of fuel. So
Tell me about this take five.
take five. Again, like you're out there for a long time. You're gonna question a lot of things, gonna get frustrated. Um, I think you just gotta take a minute, and I'm sure like your friend did at Unbound is like, I'm not leaving until you leave. You just need to take a minute and get your head right again, and realize that you can still do this and that humans can do really, really, really hard things. Um, and then, you know, don't stay in the aid station longer than 5 minutes ever. Um, you got to get that stuff and get out of there. In ultra running, there's they usually put chairs out, and it's like that's a black hole. If you sit down, you're never going back out. And if you do, it's even harder than it was when you came into the aid station. So just get your stuff and get the heck out of there.
That's phenomenal advice. That was what made my first gravel event so hard at the second aid station, was because I my friend allowed me to just lay out on the grass like this. Um, and that wasn't good because it allowed, like, that's all I want to do. I wanted to shut down, and you can't give your body that angle.
Yep.
I also like the sport that dovetails with my sports psych thing, which is just like my friend said, if you keep pedaling, you'll finish. And that sounds so obvious, but there is some like very deep Buddhistic truth in that. Like no matter how slowly you turn the pedals, like eventually you're just going to keep going forward, and it might take longer than you want, but you'll get there. And I think there's lots of little mantras that are especially relevant in more ultra slash off-road spaces where you can expect those dark moments to come, and if you don't have an answer to them, I think you can find yourself um, feeling pretty scared or savaged by your own psyche. if you're not careful. And it's just really nice to have two or three things, two or three simple, um, even sort of hilarious mantras to tell yourself, which can like inject humor in those darker moments, and you just end up like riding the wave into a more positive place. I always like to say to myself in the absolute pit of darkness, not today, Satan. I I know it's not for everybody, but funnily enough, like mumbling that to myself has not only cheered me up in many instances, but um, often when you're that tired, you don't even know that there's other people around you. And so if they hear you talking to yourself and saying, not today, Satan, it might make them laugh. And then you're improving the vibes of everybody. And so, um, yeah, this is, if anything, this is ultra stuff, ultra gravel in particular becomes such a head game. So don't think that the only training that you have to do is just for your legs. Like it's almost the point that it's so hard that it becomes a head problem.
Yeah. And this kind of dovetails a little bit with my find your gang, is there's other people that at some point later in the race, you're going to get shuffled out and there's going to be similar paced people going. And, you can avoid getting into those dark moments by even just riding with somebody for a few minutes and talking about something that is completely disassociated from the feeling in your legs, right? And it just gives your mind something else to focus on for a few minutes. And you can kind of like power through some of those lulls because the lulls are going to come. But I think one of the biggest things that I've learned in this ultra distance stuff is I know it's going to come. I don't know when, but I know it's also going to go away. And I'm also going to be able to push through and get to the next wave. So, yeah, just
Yeah, for better or worse, it doesn't last forever. It might actually be better if it was worse longer, because then you would stop doing that. But
yeah, exactly.
and let's see, do I have anything? We don't have.
Tactics.
I'm a little short on tactics time. Do you want me to dive into that at all? I can skip it. I don't want to.
No, I think if you can touch on a high level, like, because, one thing that I made a mistake of is I got on the start line. I'm in the front of my wave and I'm trying to hang with all those guys. And you know, do I follow wheels or do I sit back, pace myself, and then pick them off later in the race, kind of a thing, like what do you tell your athlete?
Yeah, I first of all, I think it depends on your race distance and also where you're at physically and what your goals are. So I think part of it is like being pretty realistic. Like if it's a shorter event and you think you may or may not have the legs to like be in the lead group or contend or whatever, then you should absolutely like burn some matches and go for it, because gravel is always going to involve some, unless it's the absolute gnarliest, really like more like a mountain bike, a light mountain bike race than a gravel race, which do exist. Looking at you, Bighorn Gravel slash BWR. But if the more gravelly it is, like race tactics, road tactics will be in play, meaning like drafting matters. And if you can be in the draft, you're going to, with other groups of people, with other people, you will go faster for less energy. And that's going to be a huge benefit to you. So it's worth spending some energy upfront to stay in there as long as it's sort of reasonable, versus just being like at the first surge, nope, I'm just going to like do my own thing and stay at this stay at my tempo pace. It's like, well, it doesn't always roll, especially when it's shorter. But when it's longer, that calculus completely changes. And I'm saying, like, I think for most people, it's around the 100-mile mark, I would say roughly, we'll call it 100 and above. Then I think a different set of tactics in, which I call the play in three parts, which is you should be very conservative and realistic about where you think you should be, and then try to light all of your matches on fire to be in a group you ultimately probably don't belong in. Like you will be so served by going pretty hard, settling in with a good group of people and working together, but not overextending yourself. pretending you're the fittest person, you're the least fit person in the group, and eating like your beard meets food, like you're a professional YouTube eating contest guy, and waiting. Because what happens is, if you do this in the first act, which is everybody goes bananas and goes too hard, except for you, and then in the second act, you continue to work and eat. And then in the third act, everybody who went bananas and went too hard and didn't eat or forgot to eat enough explodes. And then you see the most fantastical, like wild scenarios playing themselves out on the gravel road. Like I've passed cyclocross world champions and former like crit stars and former European champions out on the plains of Emporia. Little old me, gravel god himself, who's really just the fastest slow person in history. Like very little talent, but just held back, worked in my group, ate my face off, and didn't get out in front of my skis. And you're like, well, that's a coward's way to play it. It's like it is, but it's a different event. Like all those ultra distances are different. That's like part of what feeds into the mythos is like everybody thinks they're gonna like it's just like at the group ride at lunch hour. Like everybody's a hero for an hour, but the fastest people in some of these events, like if the winner finishes in 10 hours, it's like the winner finishes in 10 hours. Like that's longer than your average work day. And your plan is to like light everything on fire in the first hour. Like, so that's how I see the plays. And I think, well, it's not very emotionally satisfying. Like your ego is not going to be your best buddy in those first couple hours, but it sure will in the last three. Let me tell you that.
Yeah, I mean that's sound advice. And also knowing the course and the profiles, like if it's end loaded and you burn all those matches and there's a bunch of climbing at the end, oh Betty, it's no good.
That's a signature gravel promoter slash BW. I would say it's a signature BWR gravel promoter move. Like
Hmm.
it's 130 miles and you get to 120 and you look down your Garmin and you're like, I'm almost done. Like I can finally have a hot dog and some nice beverages. And then it's just like above category climb starting in 200 meters. And you're like, what?
Yes. Yeah, so I mean, and that goes back to, the getting your mindset right, understanding that, the logistics, things like that. So, all right. Um, yeah, let's open it up. We've got, all right. Ruth wants to know, how do you decide what pressure to use? Tire pressure.
You entirely rely on the manufacturers. People like Envy have these dedicated pages where you can go in and it'll say, hey, what kind of wheels are you running? How much do you weigh? Hey, put in roughly this pressure. It's great. The key thing to it all is that you have a good pressure gauge, because I didn't know this, especially when I started, but actually the pressure that is read on your pump is not always one to one with reality, which can be pretty like you wouldn't think it'd be a big deal. It can be just off a couple psi either way, but sometimes it can be significantly off, which is going to really change how you corner and how it feels and your vulnerability to flats.
Yeah.
So I would do that investing.
I like the Silka calculator. And the first time that I used it, I was like, there's no way that's the right pressure. That's incredibly low. But I mean, they've spent the time, they've got the resources. I believe it now. For Unbound, what IF intensity factor is appropriate to target? How do you set your pacing goals? From Isaac.
Well, if you want to like be in there with the contenders, you're gonna have be able to basically hold, I think it's like 0.82 ish, between zero point 0.8 and 0.85 for 10 hours. It's pretty hard. And that assumes that your threshold is high enough to be able to be in the group. So it's pretty rigorous. So one thing I like to do with my athletes is get them to the point where they're not aerobically decoupling for about 60% of their expected race distance or the race finishing time, um, trying to hold the zero point 0.8 IF. And once they can do that, that solves for a lot of things. So that means that their eating is on point, their hydration is on point, and they have a pretty good feel for what their race pace is going to be.
Let's see. Hey Jeff, thanks for putting that in the Q&A, the link to the Silka. Um, let's see. Oh man, Dave. Oof, I don't know if we should get into this. Dave wants to know, when I first read about gravel, it was described as a community celebration of diversity, getting those not usually seen at bike events involved and enjoying the ride. Whatever happened to that?
Oh, I just wrote about this. I, what happened is humans happen, and this, I think this, if you've been in, well, in so many things, but if you've been in cycling long enough, you see this cycle where road was cool, and then where mountain biking was cool, and then it wasn't cool, and then road got cool and it wasn't cool, and then cyclocross got cool and it wasn't cool, and now it's gravel's turn. And what happens every time? Humans invent a game, and then people who do really well at the game are rewarded and have high status, and then more people want to do that, and so it gets more competitive, and because it gets more competitive, people bend the rules, and that manifests in crappy behavior. And as I sort of put it in my Substack, it went from gravel events that I initially participated in, went from like people vibing and playing reggae music and handing out pre-prepared bacon in the race, to getting elbowed in the mouth for like 70th place at SPT within the space of 3 years. So it's just a human thing. Like, and if you want to stop that, you almost have to stop making a competition, because people they want to be cool. You know, if you're fast and you're, I guess, if we want to stop, if we want to return to that Garden of Eden start with gravel, you have to remove all the incentives that give status and reward to people who are just the fastest at going from A to B, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the other thing is looking at the actual events. There's events and there's races, and determining which events are about the community and party pace and just having some fun versus like Unbound, SBT. There's too much on the line. There's money, there's sponsorship needs, there's egos, things like that. Like I'm gonna go do Rule of Three for the first time in May. And if you read their website,
Heck yeah.
it's, yeah, they have podiums, but they don't care. It's more about like having everybody go out and do a fun ride and not having the right bike for the course because there is such a crazy variance of surface types that you're going to be hitting. So I think it's more a matter of like finding finding the right event as opposed to a race if you want to find that kind of diversity thing. So
Also, Dave, I have one more thing to add, Josh. It, I hate to out myself as a cross country skier, but that was in my first life. And I remember in some of the later races that I participated in, people introduced the idea of a fun leader jersey. Like the person who was having the most fun at the event was rewarded.
yeah.
And that made the races really cool. So if there was more of that going on at gravel races, like who is enjoying themselves the most versus who's the fastest, well, then that actually changes the incentive in the event and at any event to a place where I think it's far more positive and closer to what you miss about gravel.
Yeah. Yeah, Dave Dave says quit giving out place awards. Do best joke on the course, best costume, most food consumed, last place, gutting it out. There's a few like events out there that are doing that, and I think you're gonna see more of that. So,
Great ideas.
yep. Let's jump back more into training real quick here. Sally wants to know what a taper week looks like ideally, and in the context of a shorter race, 40 miles and 33,000 feet of climbing.
Well, first of all, it depends how important it is to you. If it's your most important race, then you probably want to go in to the race so fresh that you're actually kind of having a meltdown to everyone close to you because you think you're losing so much fitness. Like that is usually the psychological point for your most important race, where you know you're fresh enough that you have built up a reservoir that you can dig and dig and dig and dig into. But anything short of that is probably not good enough. Now, if it's a less high priority race, then I don't think you need to get so fresh. I think you should maintain your normal training rhythm to a greater or lesser extent. Say it's a B race, maybe you'd skip one interval session that week to just keep yourself a little bit, to leave a little bit more in the legs for the race. But if it's just like if it's almost a training race, then it's like, well, don't modify your training at all. And this isn't from my playbook. This is Joe Friel, who wrote a Bible about these things. So
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it depends on too on your level of volume for the last however long too, right?
I will say in general that people grossly, because they grossly overestimate how quickly they lose fitness. Like
Yeah.
you perked my ears up when you said I went to Alaska and I hiked, and it's like so many people would have an absolute meltdown about that. Like they would despise their spouse or significant other. Like, how can you do this to me? My race is. It's like, yeah, it's not ideal, but especially if you're moving, like your fitness doesn't just evaporate in a day. Like it, when it really goes away, it's like you've stopped for long periods. And I know you can look at studies and say, well, your VO2 after 8 days off drops, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, but especially that's the cool thing about longer events. Like
Yeah.
it's so much about endurance, and that stays.
Right. So kind of playing off of this, Isaac wanted to ask a follow-up question to an answer you gave earlier by what is aerobically decoupling? You're the coach, you can answer that one.
Aerobic decoupling is a measure of the heartbeats it takes to produce a certain amount of watts. So if somebody's doing a steady state interval, let's say you go out and you ride at the top of your zone 2, the bottom of your zone 3, you can see over time if the heartbeats that you're expending to produce those watts goes up. And if it does greater than 5% over that, over whatever duration you're riding at, then you decoupled, meaning that you weren't aerobically fit enough to keep using the same amount of heartbeats to produce that power. So if you're doing a very long ride, you can see over time, like if you try to hold 0.8 IF to Isaac's question and you don't decouple, that's a very good indicator that you have the aerobic endurance to not fall apart on these longer events.
Yeah, and so to build that or to prevent that decoupling, you just have to do a lot more volume at that aerobic level, right?
Well, there's lots of ways. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not just ride endurance. It's like you've got to kind of do it all. You got to do your VO2 work. So you got to do your zone 6 work. So you got to do your endurance. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the whole package. All right. Let's see. Bethan has a question. Any tips for when you get on a hard bit of single track or something you cannot manage well technically, but you feel like you're holding up people? Do you move over or just chew on the bit and keep on trucking?
I'll let you answer first, Josh.
Um, I think for this it's a hard one because I'm too much of a nice guy and I'll let people go by. But at the same time, like it's your race, and if they want to get around you, tell them to look for an opportunity and you'll give them a little bit of room. But I think a lot of it just comes down to communication for me. Um,
I love that. I To me, I have, I guess, a little bit of a more sizzling take, which is you don't need to apologize for existing. You signed up for the race. If they were so fast, they'd already be ahead of you.
Yeah.
That's what I tell people. If I am not, I'm notorious for not being like God's gift to single track navigation. Um, Great, like it's your fault you didn't beat me to the entrance of the single track.
Yeah, I mean, it's your race. If other than, like I've done the Steamboat Stinger and you've got 130 people on a conga line going down single track, it is what it is. And you just gotta take your opportunities when you can. So let's see. I know one of the slides mentioned not to stress on tire size, but I'll ask this anyway. What is the trade-off for using 650B with the ability to use a wider tire versus a more conventional 7 hundo?
You want to answer me?
Um, I mean, I think a lot of this depends on your goals, right? Like, are you trying to compete, trying to win an age group, something like that? I think there is some slowness to 650s to me, but if you're just out there to like smash up PB and you want a little more comfort, like and control, just ride the 650s. What do you got?
Yeah, I guess I didn't get. I agree. They're a little slower, but here's the thing: people agonize about this thing, and they've almost turned in tire choice, wheel choice, like equipment waxing your chain, all this other stuff into a religion. Um, it doesn't. It doesn't even matter as nearly as much as you think, as much as your fitness and your nutrition and your like all of the other things. Everybody wants to agonize about, for some reason there's always this obsession about tire size and wheel size and all this other stuff. I can't tell you how many, I mean, at this point I've been to 50 plus gravel races, and I can't tell you how many times I've been close enough to the pointy end or at the pointy end racing with somebody who's on some absolute like 2007 cyclocross V braked, maybe 30 millimeter tires, like just pairing it up. And I wish more people could see that and stop like agonizing over these things, because I feel like the just time you're not going to get back. Um, don't major in the minor on the stuff. And I don't want to be glib either. Like the 650 tires is like the 27 and a half, like 27 and a half for mountain bike. So it's a little bit more stable, usually a little bit wider, less stiff, more associated with bike packing and more adventure type stuff where speed isn't as a premium. But I guarantee you, if Josh threw on a race with 650Bs, the thing holding him back would not be a 650Bs.
Nope.
It would be everything else. So I mean, consider where you are. Are you at the absolute pointy end of the spear of the race with Dylan Johnson and Keegan Swenson, or are you like hoping to win the fun leader jersey?
Yep. Back with the trash panda eating candy. Jen wants to know how would road racing compare to gravel racing? For example, I've done several 200-mile road races successfully. How would this compare to a 100-mile gravel race or similar?
The shorter it is, the more explosive it is, the more pace changes, the more it's like a road race, because you can just get away with acceleration without the penalty of exploding and spending 100 miles just miserably pedaling. Which brings up another, this is Jen, which brings up another cool point, which I think an underrated um, choice in gravel events that I wish more people took advantage of is just doing like the medium distance.
Yeah.
It's like, remember, you're probably not there to make a living. You're probably there to have fun. You can have more fun in a shorter race because you can go harder and take more chances. And if it blows up in your face or whatever, like, or even if it goes well, it's just over faster. And it's not like over in 20 minutes. Like, it's still a 3 to 5 hour race. which is plenty of time and really fun. But too many people think, oh, because the pros or whatever are doing the 120 or the 150 or the 180 or the 200, I have to. And it's like, maybe have your once, but then and architect your life to have fun.
Yeah. Well, and I think for me, what over the years, the difference between road racing and gravel racing is you have the ability to kind of like take your time a little more. Like if you do the 50 or the 100, you're not going to get removed from the race because these races are designed to be out on quiet gravel roads. You don't have to worry about road closures or, state patrol keeping everything in line and whatnot. So you have a little bit more freedom to do different distances and do them at the pace that you want to do them at. And like dip your toe in the pool and do a 40 or a 50 miler earlier in the season and then use that as a launch pad to take on that 100 later in the year.
Or inverse it, or do long events early in the year when you're trying to get some base miles. And then when you feel like you're strong, then later in the year, pick shorter and go harder. I
Yeah.
think we need to be careful not to associate like distance with prestige. It just, I'll be brief on this quick story, but it just reminds me of this running story where this guy was on a flight sitting next to a girl, and he finds out she's a runner, and she's like, oh, I do 5Ks, and she was an Olympic like 5K hopeful or something, and he was like, oh, sweetie, like someday you'll build yourself up to marathons, and it's like I think there's a lot of that going on where it's like shorter can actually be like infinitely harder and worse and more slash more exciting. And it's just this weird thing where you just think that you have to pedal until you're this husk. Otherwise it's not real gravel or cool enough. And it's like that should not be the case.
I think that that's a North American phenomenon though. Like everything has to be bigger, harder, longer, you know? Because you look at Europe, everyone really gets into 50Ks and 100Ks, whether it's running or even bikes, and over here you everyone has this push to do hundreds, 150s, and it's just I don't know, like yeah, we should just have more fun.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we're out of questions and people are starting to drop off, but I want to thank everybody for jumping on and listening to us for an hour of silliness.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining, guys.
Thanks, Maddie.
Later.